What's up, everybody? Welcome out to this bonus episode of the Game Time Guru podcast on this Saturday afternoon. I'm excited to be here with you guys as this goes live on the Facebook. This is a bonus episode, which means those who actually see it on Facebook will hear it first because I won't push this audio live up into the podcast platform until probably tomorrow or Monday. So if you hear it on Facebook first, fantastic. You're the first ones to hear it. And I'm talking about the UFC real quick, my thoughts on the UFC going forward with their fight card this evening, right? So UFC 249, they're going to be doing their event without fans, okay? So Jacare Souza, he tested positive for COVID-19. Therefore, he couldn't fight Uriah Hall, which sucks for Uriah because, you know, he had been preparing for this fight for so long. He's a big-time, like, fan favorite from back in the day with the tough crowd and everything. So, it's unfortunate for Uriah, but what's scary about this is that all the sports organizations are looking at the UFC and seeing what they're going to do. The UFC has a big target on their back right now. And they make a bold statement by continuing on with this fight card, which I'm in favor of, by the way. But yeah, it's one of those situations where, one, they were already the first major sports organization to, go on since this COVID pandemic, really hit the United States. So they're the first one to like get going, even though there's no fans there. So I've already talked about that before, what it's like to watch these events with no fans. For the average sports fan, those who keep saying, oh, I want to watch football in the fall, even if there's no fans, watch the UFC tonight and see the difference. It may be just fine, but I'm just letting you guys know I've watched a big-time sporting event, which was the UFC Brasilia, without sports fans, and it sucked. It was awful without fans. It was so much different. There was so much less emotion, which it's still fun to watch the fights, but the emotion of the crowd isn't there, and it's just so much different. So keep your eye on this fight card tonight. But the other thing is, so everyone's watching them to see how this goes because these other sports organizations, like these sports like football, like the NFL, the NCAA, the NBA is looking at it. Everyone's checking it out. The NHL, the MLB, they're kind of seeing like, okay, can we make this happen, get the TV sales? Like, will it still work if we can just function this way? And so they're kind of keeping an eye on it. So they already had a target on their back to begin with. Now, they tested everybody as they got there. I saw Bruce Buffer getting tested. Obviously, he was on my show. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and check it out. Bruce Buffer, episode 139. Awesome. But, like, he was getting tested for COVID. Everybody was getting tested for COVID. And then Jacare Souza, which is Ronaldo Souza, test positive, and they to stop that particular fight, but they kept the entire card going, right? Here's why it's going to be something that everyone's going to kind of keep an eye on. Like, some people have mixed opinions. I've already seen it on the Twitter feeds on whether or not they should have kept going, even though one of the fighters that was there in the same, the same weigh-ins in the same facility, the same hotel, like, had COVID, and his whole team, was there. Like, how many people did they come in contact with during this week, as they were getting ready for the fights? And he test positive for COVID, and they're going to still continue on with the fights. So they're going to keep an eye on this. Heaven forbid anybody else in this fight card, anybody, whether it be the teams or the actual fighters themselves, gets this COVID, they get COVID, they contract this, thing, whatever you want to call it, and this sickness. If that happens, then we're going to have another question that stems from it, right? Another question that stems from that, from all these other major organizations, like, oh, crap, man. Like, you can't even play in front of no fans because the players might give it to each other. You never know, like, what's going to happen. So there's a lot of question marks that people are kind of keeping an eye on. I commend the UFC and Dana White for moving forward with the card, right? And not being scared to take that next step and be in the limelight right now. All these major organizations, these major sports, they're keeping an eye on this event tonight to kind of see what it's going to be like for fans all around the world. What are the TV sales like? What are, what's the emotion like? What's it like for the actual athletes themselves? Do they perform the same way when there's no fans? Is there pressure? Is there less pressure? What is it? Like, I mean, there's a lot of question marks. So I commend Dana White for thinking outside the box and really just going forward with it and saying, okay, yes, we're hit with this pandemic the same as everybody else is, but we're not going to let that completely derail us. We're going to keep trying the best that we can to put these together. He stacked this card. UFC 249 is stacked. So I'm excited to watch it tonight, guys. Keep an eye on it and see what happens. And let's keep an eye on how these other organizations, these other major sports are checking it out and seeing what happens. It's kind of interesting. They're the first ones, so they're taking that leap of faith, and someone had to do it. It's kind of like the NBA when the COVID pandemic, it hit the United States, but everyone was kind of figuring out what are we going to do. But then all of a sudden, Rudy Gobert contracts it and he gets, he tests positive for COVID. Then Donovan Mitchell, they shut down the entire NBA, right? So the NBA shuts down, then everybody else follows suit, right? The UFC is the first one taking that step to kind of come back. So we're kind of seeing what happens. Somebody has to be the first to do it. And then we'll see what stems from that. That's why this is such an important event. And it's actually not to try to be dramatic, but it is a very important event in the history of major sports. Just so you guys know, UFC 249, we will remember this event in the history of sports, specifically in mixed martial arts, but for all of sports. This is a huge moment in the history of sports as we're kind of in, uncharted territory. We've never been here before in the sports world, right? So we'll keep an eye on it. And this isn't just sports. This stems out to a lot of different businesses and the way that people run their own businesses right now and how they can adjust to this in the market. So this is kind of a very, very important moment, and I encourage you guys to pay attention to it tonight. UFC 249. Check it out. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, make sure to go find the Game Time Guru on all your favorite podcast platforms. Check it out. We'll be coming to you with all the cool content, sharing athletes' stories, showing you that they're more than just dumb jocks, right? Athletes are humans that have awesome stories. We've got all sports figures coming on the show to share their stories with you guys so that you can hear it from everyone and you can see sports through a different lens. Take care and enjoy your weekend.